Jo Cox Way cycle ride started 8 years ago after the murder of Jo Cox, a businessman from Yorkshire, Sarfraz Mian, wanted to make a statement that actually, even though what happened was obviously an awful event, there was actually an awful lot of good stuff going on in communities around the country. And he wanted to create an event that brought people together. And that year, a small number of them cycled from Jo's constituency in Yorkshire to London, where she was obviously an MP. And ever since then, it's grown and grown. So in the first year, there were about a dozen people who completed the ride. This year, there are 83 of us, of all ages, of all abilities. Our youngest rider is just 16, and our oldest is 78. And you may be able to see some of them coming past as we speak.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you're obviously very involved. We've got you here with your helmet in your cycling gear. Is this the first time you've taken part? How many times have you taken part? And why is it important to you?
That's a good question. It's not the first time I've taken part. It's actually the fourth time I've taken part. I wanted to give something back, really, because I very much believe in Jo's values. I think the phrase that Jo was most famous for was something she said in her maiden speech in the House of Commons, that we have more in common than that which sets us apart. And she was referring to her constituency here in Yorkshire, Batley and Spen. It's a collection of former mill towns, former mill villages. It's not a particularly affluent place, but it does have lots and lots of different communities. It's a really diverse place. And she felt that there was too much focus on division and not enough focus on bringing communities together. And that really is what this ride is all about. And that's why I joined it. So, for example, we have a couple of politicians from London, from Southwark, taking part today, including a former mayor, and we have people in their 70s from Yorkshire. These people probably would never meet if it wasn't for a ride like this. We have people from small villages, we have people from big cities, we have people of all abilities, all genders. And for the first time this year, we have more women taking part in the ride than men, which is quite a big thing because, you know, I'm a middle-aged man in Lycra, and I think the common perception of cycling is it's just for people like me. That really isn't the case. Cycling is a great activity. It's good for your health. It's good for the environment. It's not quite as scary as some people think. And it's wonderful to see so many women on the ride this year, outnumbering the men for the first time.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you spoke there, more women, about as well some of the ages and range of people taking part. Do you think that Jo's legacy is still very much felt today then?
I think so. And Jo was a passionate campaigner for gender equality. And we saw at the general election a couple of weeks ago, I think there are now more female MPs than there had ever been. But we're still some way short of 50-50 representation. I think something like 40% of MPs are now female. That is something that Jo felt very, very strongly about. And she desperately wanted a House of Commons which reflected society. It reflected the country and the areas MPs there represent. And we feel like that on the bike ride as well. We feel that the fact we now have more female riders than male is quite a big statement that this sort of thing matters. Perhaps not so much in a cycle ride, but certainly in places like the House of Commons.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you did mention the range of ages taking place. I imagine it's not just pro cyclists that are on this trip. So can anybody take part then?
Yeah, literally anybody can take part. It really is for all abilities. We haven't got any pro cyclists on the trip. I think it might be a bit easier for them. But yeah, some of us struggle because this end of the journey is really, really hilly. We'll be climbing around 6,000 feet today, and by the time we get to London, we'll have climbed 10, 12,000 feet. But some people on the ride are really new to cycling. One of my fellow cyclists only took it up during lockdown. She'd never been on a bike before. She's in her 50s. Her knees weren't good enough for her to run anymore. So she took up cycling. She had cycling lessons. She didn't know how to use the gears. And today, here she is cycling to London. So, yeah, that's part of what this is all about as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a very long but absolutely amazing journey. The ride raises funds for the Jo Cox Foundation. First of all, just tell us a little bit about what that is and also about how much money, you know, is expected to be raised.
Well, the Jo Cox Foundation is an organisation which was formed after Jo's death 8 years ago, and it aims to keep the sort of causes that Jo was passionate about in the spotlight. So one of them is bringing communities together and that whole more in common ethos. I think that's what Jo was most well known for. But there are other things as well. One of them, which has been in the public eye in the last few weeks, is civility in politics. It's about being able to disagree with each other respectfully, rather than some of the scenes we've seen in some areas during the general election. Another thing Jo was passionate about was combating loneliness. And again, cycling is something that can really, really help with that. It can bring people together, particularly older people, but people of all ages, really. So that's what the Jo Cox Foundation, they're the sort of causes it promotes. And the big thing for the Jo Cox Foundation, I suppose, something viewers might have heard of, is something called the Great Get Together. So every year on Jo's birthday in June, they encourage communities to come together to have events and talk to their neighbours for the first time, to meet new people, so that communities can help each other and can become closer knit.